Musto recently sent me to Barcelona to catch up with Athena Pathway. I took the opportunity to speak with Nick Robbins and Tash Bryant, helms on the Pathway's youth and women's teams, all about the tactics and trims of AC40s. With me for a bit of a tactics brief for you Mozzy Sales fans, I've got Nick Robbins, Tash Bryant of Athena Pathway. We're going to have a little talk today about the AC40s, but really quite a lot of what we'll be talking about will be transferable to the big boats as well, really talking about basically foiling monohuils with canting arms and like the specifics about getting them around the course. What are going to be the key differences in terms of like the start pen and those kind of low speed aspects of the course compared to a conventional dinghy?
Yeah, I guess like you already have it right. The difference being that you need to stay foiling in the pre-start, and so you have a minimum speed. Unlike when you're sailing in your dinghy and we can all kind of queue up or be holding station at an end that we really want, you have to go quite a lot further back in time and start planning how you're gonna get there and try and be on time. Kind of actually really similar to a bigger yacht where you can't slow down too much because you lose flow. It's like quite similar, but with a higher speed, I suppose.
So it's back to the J class kind of.
Yeah.
Like when you get in the sim, you'll see we have a lot of technology in front of us.
Yeah.
And quite often you can actually just like look at we have a start screen, like a software screen, that gives us a bunch of information all around the course, but in the start it's really quite key. And you can actually sit and watch that and not actually look around at all. You know where the boundaries are, the marks. When we race, the other boats will be on our screen. So you can actually probably sail not actually looking around at all. I actually find myself in the pre-start sometimes just like staring at the screen. I'm like, oh, I haven't looked up in like a minute and a half, slightly concerning, but you've got everything directly in front of you.
And then in terms of like what makes a good start on a foiling boat, stadium course, are you looking for speed through the line, distance to the line, proximity to the boundaries as well? Because if you come off the pin end and you're like, whatever, 10 seconds into attack, I guess that's a factor as well.
It's all the same things as you would have in a normal class, I think. Like your line bias, it's really important to be on time, but your line bias and how you're going into that boundary, which is coming up quite quickly, I guess you can't hide as well from having a bad start because you're all going to have to tack for the boundary, and you can end up being, you can end up in a tricky lane quite quickly, you know, if you have a bad start.
Yeah. And obviously, like, being on the foils is good, being off the foils is terrible, but what's the acceleration? If you're on the foils and you're in like a high slow mode and you hit the line dead on and you've got to accelerate, is that okay? Is the acceleration when you're on the foils decent, or is that a big no?
It depends on the conditions, really. Yeah. Like we've been doing a lot of flat water sailing these last couple of weeks, and it's glamour. Like when you go on the water tomorrow, you'll see it's so nice, like so nice. But then a couple of weeks ago, we had some gnarly waves out there, and you can really just park yourself up quite quickly, and so it's definitely different. But when you come off start line in like normal sailing, like boats kind of converge near ley lines, it just happens a lot sooner. So it's very similar like ley line approach when you're coming towards a boundary. There's a few more little who has right of way rules when you come to the boundary, but it's really similar to if you're approaching a ley line with 3 boats on your hip. Really, really similar thought process to that.
So you've kind of seen the tactics play out in the sim, and I guess you must have pretty keenly watched Jeddah and Vilanova as well. So what's your kind of like impressions of, like if you get a 10-degree knock, are you tacking on that, or are you just holding that to a boundary? What's your kind of...
I think, a lot of placement versus the boundary influences how you're going to take the shift and whether it's going to be a moding change or you can take things. And then you're trying to plan ahead as much as you can because you can get to intersections and then you can kind of minimize maneuvers, but you also don't want to miss out on a shift because sometimes in some conditions the tack loss is actually in these boats like really small, and that's makes for like what we saw in Jeddah pretty exciting racing when you can be really free to tack, and it's not necessary to use the whole width often, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you have to work really hard, like work really well with who you're sailing with on the other side, because we can only see 50% of what is actually there. And so we've learned a lot about like talking about where boats are, how we're going to explain that, We've had a few like tight crosses and ducks with boats. Just at the moment, we're out there sailing around. No one really knows where everyone's going, and so it's a bit chaotic. It'll be nice when we get on the race course and we know where everyone's actually trying to get to. And at the moment, like describing where boats are, it's just a work in progress.
Yeah, it does. That's one of the key differences, I guess, compared to pretty much every other class's division. Like you see, like you say, half the picture, and that's really different from a dinghy.
Yeah. Until you go around the women mark, then you see what the other person's been trying to describe. Like it's nothing like the pressure on your side is way better than mine. What are you saying?
Or we watch the video after, and we had a few instances where we're a bit closer than we thought, and only half the boat saw how close we were to other boats, and come off the water, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize they were there." And we're like, "You don't see them at all. You're just like sitting there chilling, thinking everything's fine. Like there's a few boats just like carnage next to you."
Okay, take us around the women mark on the Downwind now, and what's it like in terms of looking across the course, looking for pressure? Where are you looking for the gust first of all, and is it gust or shift orientated downwind?
That one, I guess, again, depends on the condition. Like in all classes, especially the skiffs, it's quite similar in that your angles in some parts of the wind range change lots with a little bit more breeze, and in others not changing so much. And so we have the same feature here where you have that kind of gust shift priority that changes. And I guess, yeah, like you say, you're sailing back through what you came upwind in. So that's a bit different to a slower class, I suppose.
And Tash, in terms of like coming into the leeward marks, picking gates, how does that affect you setting up for the next leg? Like, what are you looking for into a clean leeward mark rounding? Would you take a jibing in, or would you round and tack? Like, what's the pros and cons?
Dependent, because in the light air, jibing can be pretty heinous sometimes, and especially with where the gas is from. If you're following other boats, or just it's a bit more to think about with what you can't actually see, which is really weird. But we're slowly learning about that. In the breeze, though, we haven't really done heaps in the breeze yet, or I haven't. You have a lot of data though on your screen of what the bias is, so you can see, as soon as you're around the top mark, you can see what the gate bias is at the bottom. So you don't really want to be deciding last minute what's going on. You kind of plan from the top of like, or even the race before, like it's been quite consistent out here, and so you know which top mark you want around and which bottom mark you want around most times. And so you can sit there and exit the top mark and already plan out how you want to enter the bottom mark, and be going, okay, if you want to focus on inside overlap versus if you want to focus on the shift, or which is long jibe, or where you want to hit the boundary. There's a few things you think about there, but you've already planned it. So if you're changing your decision in the middle of the gate, it's usually your plan's gone wrong.
So not like me in the 800 where it's like mid-drop, I'm caught.
Yeah, you're wondering which way to go.
Yeah, ideally not.
Jibe drop as I'm pulling the boom over.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah.
It's different to get used to though. Like with boundary racing, there's so many more set plays you can talk about. It's quite a lot of repetition. Might be like different areas on the boundary, but things come up quite frequently throughout the races. And so yeah, sometimes you can sit there before the race and be like, I want to be left top mark turn, left bottom mark turn, or whatever it is, and just go, okay, this is how I'm going to plan it. And then in the moment, you decide what to do with the boats. So you already have a picture of what you're trying to do, and it's like, how do we manage the boats around us now?
Bring it down into the boat now in terms of the roles. Like these boats, you've got a battery and you've got buttons in front of them, so the world's your oyster. Like, how do you prioritize this kind of like trim cycle? What are your kind of constant adjustments, and what are your, I'll just set that and forget it?
Got a lot of power to do things, and you're not limited in physicality at all. And it just comes down to whether you've got time to do it, rather than whether you, or more whether you want to do it, rather than whether you can do it. So which is quite nice, and like you say, pretty different to most boats.
Different, but also similar. Like if you held the main sheet on, the gust came, and you tried to keep the boat pointing in the same direction, but no one trimmed the sails, you round up or you capsize. Yeah. Exactly the same process here. Like we could sail around and the trimmers dictate where we go, like exact same thing. So it's actually not too dissimilar. You just have like everything in front of you. So yeah, we're just holding the wheel really. They're guiding us everywhere we want to go. We're hoping to put the boat where we want to go, but it's honestly up to them to get us there.
It's the biggest thing when people get into skiffs, isn't it, with a crew, and they're like playing the main sheet loads, and then their helm steering loads, and it's all out of balance. And
yeah, it's really important that you like communicate between you how the moding is, and just like it would, just exactly the same as the skiff. Just
have a wheel instead. Yeah. But you can feel the load through it the same, like when you have weather helm and everything, like You'll get weather helm tomorrow and you'll feel it. You'll have lee helm too sometimes and you won't want to deal with that. And so yeah, it's the exact same feeling. It's just getting used to it in a different boat.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for that. That is an awesome explainer. And for anyone watching at home, just to be completely clear, this is effectively the afterguard of an AC75. So kind of similar-ish roles apart from the autopilot.
Yeah.
So there's good insights on all the racing this summer, not just the 40s, but the big boats as well. So thank you very much for your time. And I think we're going in the sim next, so I'm going to find out how little I've just paid attention to anything you've just said. Nice, thanks very much. And yeah, see you around.
Thanks for watching. I hope you agree there's some real insights there about the optimum performance and tactics for AC40s. I'd like to say a big thank you to Musto for giving me this opportunity to go out there and meet the Athena team. I'm really looking forward to the women's and youth competitions kicking off. And in fact, I'll be out there with Musto reporting from the ground. So be sure to follow their Musto clothing socials and yeah, I'll see you around.